Oh,
Yes. I don't have 20-foot guys or do that here. On the back. This is what. It's got the. We're gonna get rid of the microphone.
there's two of them.
Yeah, those speakers. I see you coming in third.
I noticed this, if you would like us to speak to organization, do you all have like a speakers bureau or would someone want to come? Here's the caveat though. I'm part of Carmichael Toastmasters and we meet at 6:30 in the morning on Mondays.
Oh, nice.
So not.
Well, nowadays it's right out at 6:30. It's like nothing.
So, I mean, a lot of times we're a small club, but we have vacancies in our speaker agenda and we would rather have someone we know.
Yeah, yeah.
So you.
I'd have to just coordinate that
Are you
time.
the one who coordinates?
I am.
Okay, so I could contact.
Yeah,
you
it just
later.
kind of depends on what you're interested in. If you're interested in conservation, we get the conservation coordinator out. And
Yeah.
if
It's
it's
just
something
a,
more Dan related, then we get the general manager.
it's just a 5 to 7 or, 7 to 10. I mean, they can have 15 to 20 if they want, but it's usually we have 2 speakers for a shorter amount of time, but
Yeah,
the proposed merger would be of interest because people.
absolutely. Yeah,
not
yeah. And
always-
we've kind of got our road show going right
Yeah.
now because of,
I believe it, yeah.
we get Kathy and Dan out and they speak to different
Okay. Yeah, I just
organizations.
noticed that. So, I mean, we would.
Yeah, just reach out. I think you have my contact info. and-
Most likely.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
sure.
The mess.
Uh-oh. Oh, you?
And work that way in my share some of it. That's exactly right. That's it. I do one recording from last week, but I only like 22 minutes of.
No, because the file is so large, and then the bandwidth.
Hey, Dan?
Otherwise, that today's a family.
I know.
Oh, you did?
So,
Thanks for letting me know. All right, hold on.
I probably.
No, I mean.
Coming in.
I don't know.
I'll ask them, but better have that. But how could they?
It ended right after.
Oh.
Yours are here.
Got the important part.
It's him.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he's thinking that he's listening for you.
Prior to, or yeah. So these will go to Jennifer, yes? I'll just collect them prior to and then give them to her.
Like me to ask when you're getting married, then we're only. So keep it on one. Yeah. A lot of people. A lot of ways to interpret it. It's just a pretty way to say that. Yeah. All right.
I signed the paper for the speech on today.
Aw.
Yeah.
Did someone buy it? Did you have a buyer? Quickly. You just listed it Saturday or something, didn't you?
That's the cabinet, and it's selling that too.
Thank you.
Who picked up the tree for them?
Right next door. The one with all the tree farm next door with the water wheel and all that.
Yeah. He seemed to be a good guy.
Yes,
A little over the top.
yeah, he wants me to stay on as a consultant.
Yeah.
At no pay. And I don't know.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Locke,
Good morning.
how are you?
Afternoon.
Afternoon, evening, whatever it is.
They all kind of run together.
Yeah, they do. These long days like this.
Similar role.
Been three of them. Council last night.
Oh, ouch.
I'll try out there.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Tomorrow is a easy. You're gonna probably go to bed early. Or not, I don't know. Forget who I'm talking to, I'm sorry.
Different shade.
Too funny.
Oh, I should have got one of those. Heck, you know what? I'm gonna grab one before I. The other one, right? All right. Yeah. Get one. Thank you.
Yeah, so here to answer any questions. Yeah. You were at the Carmichael. But this busy at the beginning of the meeting?
They had a few more voters up, but people can do their appointment.
Cool.
Oh, really? I would expect. Okay. Like I said, I'm here for, as a research.
Hi, Mr. Enriquez, how are you?
Doing well, how are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you this evening.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, so far it's a better turnout than we usually have at board meetings, so it's a good sign.
This is the explanation of more than what we get our own.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So,
funny.
yeah, so I think it'll be good.
I think so too. Yeah, it's very good. We'll see. All right.
How you doing?
How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. So, yeah, Dan was gonna sit over here somewhere, so.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
I'll be peeking over this door.
All right, sounds good. Let me know if you need anything.
So is just out of curiosity. Oh, good. I am there.
You were, yeah.
Yeah. That's what.
Oh, is it? Okay. I'm gonna mute her then.
It's okay. I didn't plug the microphone in.
Okay.
I said, watch, tell me how bad I did.
You're bad. You're crazy.
I've got a lot of content. I really enjoy it. I hope it's not as, I hope it's not as challenging. Hey, I remember swimming in that nice warm lake when I was a Boy Scout. Yes, it was. It wasn't my fault.
Jennifer, I'm gonna collect the cards and then kind of gather them and then just get them whenever. Yep. Okay. Good.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank
Mhm.
Pretty old. Wasn't the youngest either, but I think I was.
Yeah, I've had that whole.
Yeah, he's probably an old guy. He doesn't know.
The big man for the weekend? Yeah.
To verify all the papers.
Oh. Yeah. I tell you what, that was amazing. 42 years ago. I'm trying to think of what I was doing. 32 years ago. Yeah, no, it's nowhere ready to make that kind of decision.
Yeah, wasn't one of your better decisions.
Yeah, it seemed worth it for much. What's it?
43 kids.
But my sister.
You using?
See, just what I was thinking. I think of myself as pretty tall. We have a lot of participants. Just the 6 or so, right?
Yeah, so far.
Still. Wow.
The now, so you don't want people elbow to elbow. That's never comfortable.
Now we had council. For some reason, the electricians only meet on days when we have council at 6 in the morning. She's like my quarter days. There's no rest for the wicked. You know, I think it's a little paranoid from the ad out after.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I am.
Well,
Yeah. Serious. When I saw the South, utility district.
we need to get one. Should we? I can grab my knuckles on.
Yeah, well, my brother. We'll be like that. But the thing is nowadays we can do so much more remote.
Yeah.
That's, that's.
Yeah. I'll work with a story that I got.
5 years ago, people.
Okay. Thank you.
I gotta actually get a funeral, someone I used to work for. Almost like 40 years.
This council to vote yes on my motion for the mayor's impeachment and the rescission of her ridiculous lease.
Stop the theatrics, Peter. You're just upset that I didn't support your breakwater deal.
Suddenly you care about the environment, Ellie. You spearheaded that seaside strip mall that every environmental group opposed.
I now realize that that was a mistake.
Madam Mayor,
She did. She's dropping everything.
Oops.
I'm just kidding.
Like the way the ball game, air flow.
No, I brought my in, that's like my own second. Want something to hide behind, it's kind of a problem.
I can't see it over there. Right.
Good evening. My name is Jay Boatwright. I'm president of the Sacramento Suburban Water District Board of Directors. I'd like to call this July, June 21st, 2023, special board meeting, public information workshop for the Sacramento Suburban Water District meeting to order. If you're able to rise, please rise and follow me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Heather, will you call the roll, please?
Director Wickert,
Here.
Director Thomas,
Here.
Director Boatright,
Present.
Director Jones,
Here.
Director Locke,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. Tonight, we have a special workshop regarding combination discussions with Carmichael Water District. If you did want to speak on this event and this item tonight, please complete one of these goldenrod speaker requests there in the back corner there at the table and bring it up to our board clerk. Also, if you wish to speak to this body regarding something not on the agenda, something not pertaining to the combination discussion, this is also your opportunity. You will be allowed up to 3 minutes to talk about any items that are not on the agenda. Is there anybody that wishes to speak on something that's not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we will move on to discussion item number 1, Sacramento Suburban Water District, Carmichael Water District combination. Want to thank all of you for your attendance. We're looking forward to the input and the information that you'll be able to provide us, and that hopefully you will get back from us on our discussions. We are here to hear from you. I'd like to acknowledge the work of Directors Jones and Watt, who have served for several months now on the combination discussion committee with their counterparts from the Carmichael Water District. This has also placed a lot of extra work on the part of our general managers, York and Miss Lee. We want to thank you for that effort that you put in for it. Tonight, we are going to be conducting this meeting as a forum, and we have a facilitator, Jennifer Forsythe, excuse me. I'd like to read her bio if I could. Jennifer is the president and founder of Jennifer Forsythe and Company, a consulting firm focused on innovative management and strategic communications. Previously, she served as the executive director of Leadership California, a network of more than 1,600 accomplished women dedicated to advancing the leadership role of women in business, communities, and public policy. For much of her career, Jennifer worked at the Association of California Water Agencies, where she was the Deputy Executive Director of External Affairs. In that role, she was in charge of the association's team that worked to advance image, brand, issues, policies, and delivery of service to members. During her 29-year tenure at Aqua, she held the position of Director of Strategic Coordination and Public Affairs, Director of Communications and Outreach, Director of Communications and Human Resources, and Manager of Public Affairs. Before joining Aqua, her site worked for the Sacramento Municipal Utility District and for Sun Diamond Growers of California, a statewide agricultural cooperative. She earned her bachelor's degree in journalism and public relations from California State University, Chico. She joined the Water Education Foundation Board in 2015. Jennifer, if you'd like to stand up and start your presentation, Jennifer will be our facilitator tonight.
Introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here tonight and taking your time to help us hear from you. We really, really appreciate that very much. And I just wanted to remind everybody that this workshop is intended to share with you the findings of this very recently completed study on potential combining of Sac Suburban Water District and Carmichael Water District. It is a very preliminary study. It is very high level, so there's a lot more work to be done to get into details. But both boards were very, very adamant that they wanted to share the findings of what they have learned so far on this study with all of you. So we really appreciate you being here tonight. And I also want to emphasize that the directors that are seated here in the room are your elected representatives. And their top priority with this workshop is to hear from you, to hear your comments. And if you did not wish to make a comment verbally, there's also a form in the back if you would like to write a comment or a question on the comment card. We're going to be recording all of the public feedback throughout this process. And that goes for everyone that might be listening in and watching us virtually. We do have an audience. This is our virtual audience here, represented by what we call the OWL. So we'll be intermittently responding to your questions and comments and also turning to our virtual audience. So about the materials, I hope you all saw there's a wealth of information so far that's been put together, FAQs and fact sheets and brief summaries on the study that you're going to hear about. That information is also all available online for those of you that are listening virtually. So please avail yourselves to that. And again, if you do want to make a comment, the goldenrod little forms, you fill those out and hand them to Heather. I will be collecting those and calling out your name and coming to you and allowing you to respond with your question or your comment. So we will be doing the questions and the comments after the presentation. And one of the things that we hope that you'll do is if you have more than one question, if you would keep it to your first question or your first comment, so we can be sure to get to everyone. And then we can come back to you if you have an additional question. That way we're sure that everybody has an opportunity. We are not using a clock tonight because we really want to hear from everyone. So if we can keep sort of that sort of construct for questioning, that will help us very much. And let's see, when you stand to make your comment or present your question, if you would please provide your name and your affiliation, whether you might be here from the Sac Suburban Water District or even Carmichael District, but whatever your affiliation is, please let us know what you're connected to there. A little bit of housekeeping. This workshop is being recorded, just so you're aware. All right, so now I am pleased to turn over the presentation on the exploratory study to General Manager of Sac Suburban Water District, Dan York.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, next slide.
Excuse me.
Okay, so again, personally, I want to thank everybody for attendance this evening. As Jennifer mentioned, we're here this evening, the board members, to listen to your feedback. It's very important. We've been doing this process for a little over 2 years. So this is a very good opportunity to let us know what you're thinking. And we'll do whatever we can this evening to answer your questions and comments. As Jennifer mentioned, kind of the purpose here again is to go high level on where we are today. And we'll, like I said, if we have probably 23 slide presentation here, to take about 20 minutes, and we'll open up for the questions and answers. Jennifer mentioned supporting documents back there, so please feel free. All those were an effort to do the 2x2 committee approval process, which as President Volkway mentioned, the directors Locke and Jones, along with the directors Emerson and Nelson from Carmichael on that committee. So going forward, as you mentioned in person, please feel free. Again, you mentioned we're not going to hold you 3 minutes. Take as long as you need to. Housekeeping really quick. We are recording this. The restrooms are through this double door down the hallway. And in the event of an emergency, we ask that you either exit that door over here behind us or this door over here. You go out this door, go down the driveway to the sidewalk and remain there. Here, go left and go down to the sidewalk at the end of the driveway here. All right. So here we are. So when we first started this process, we developed 5 steps. The first one is exploring the possible. And now we're in the community conversation, we're at step 2. So how we got here was back in 2020. There were 7 agencies in the region who participated in the regional collaboration study. That process took a little less than a year. We've completed that. They were accepted, accepted to all the boards of the 7 agencies. Going forward there, Carmichael and SSWD chose to continue the discussion on collaboration, but also looking further into a potential combination. So here tonight, we're going to listen to your thoughts again and the feedback and do everything we can to answer your questions and comments. So if you're not familiar with the districts, just a real quick overview. So Sax-Suburban, by the consolidation of Arcade Water District and Northridge Water District, became a district in February of 2002. We have 5 board members that are elected by division. We have 73 full-time employees. We have 47,000 service connections over 36 square miles that serves water to approximately 200,000 people. And our water supplies, so we have service water supplies entitlements. They're not water rights, they're entitlements. I'll go through these. Each one of these has stipulations. I'll go through those very quickly. So we have 26,000 acre feet per year with City of Sacramento. That one has provisions that it has to be in wet years when there's plenty of water flowing down the river. Also entitlement with Placer County Water Agency, 29,000 acre feet per year. That one has a take or pay of 8,000 acre feet. And again, that one is when in wet years. We also have the ability to receive up to 4,000 acre feet from San Juan Water District through from Bolton Lake. The place in there is they have to provide water to their retailers first before they provide water to us. And then we also have the ability to receive Section 215 water from the Bureau of Reclamation. That one, the stipulation there is they're usually releasing for flood control. We've taken as little as 100 acre feet there. This year we're fortunate, we took a little over 1,300 acre feet this year. Our main supply is groundwater. So we have 71 active groundwater wells. I want to remind everybody know too, I'll point this map right here. This map over here is actually as far over the city of Sacramento by the river and clear over here up the Folsom Lake. So Sax-Suburban is right here, and we have 4 service areas. We have 1 water system permit for 4 service areas. So the first service area, I'll go top here, little area here, it's called the Arbors. That was the old McClellan housing development from the Air Force Base. And then we have McClellan Air Force Base right there. In this section here is the north service area and the south service area. Now we do have fluoridated water that we serve into the south service area only. That was from a Source 5 grant we got back in 2007. And that was a 20-year commitment. So we'll serve fluoride in that area until the contract expires in 2027. For Carmichael, they were established as an irrigation district back in 1916. When they started being developed and being urbanized, they changed their name to Carmichael Water District in the 1980s. They too have 5 board of directors elected by division. They have 29 regular full-time positions, roughly 12,000 service connections over 8 square miles, and they serve a little over 40,000 customers. Now, I'll share with you real quick. I'll step aside here. This is the current map. The blue is the 5 divisions for Sac Suburban, and the purple is the 5 divisions for Carmichael. So their service water rights, they have 3. They're 1915, equals up to a little over 10,000 acre feet per year. Their 1925 water right is 3,600 acre feet per year. And the 1948 water right is a little over 18,000 acres per year. They do have 6 active groundwater wells. So in discussing combination, why are we discussing this? You look at operational efficiencies, reduce costs. Major one here is improved water supply reliability. When you look at the potential opportunities, those are huge. We're in California. California not going to be easier for water suppliers by any means. Some of the threats to the water supply reliability, again, climate change is huge. And I mentioned California, their regulatory requirements are ever so increasing. If you heard of Chrome 6, you heard of PFAS, TCP 1, 2, 3, those are actually 2 that are already in process. Those can affect your water supplies drastically. The whole thing too is trying to keep our rates affordable. As Jennifer mentioned, these are your elected officials. They also are ratepayers. They pay their rates as well. So they're concerned about their rates going forward. Next slide.
Mhm.
So the initial study, what it looked into water industry trends, it looked at the water demands, it looked at the regulatory changes, both past and current and upcoming, water supply reliability. They looked at both districts, billing rates, their staffing, operations, capital improvement programs, finances and debt. They also addressed some of the benefit and costs of potential combination. And really, as Jennifer mentioned earlier, this is still high level. These are opportunities that are still in conceptual and need further analysis. So the topics explored, go through real quick, and I'll explain more of these other slides, but water supply reliability, the rates, revenues and expenses, debt services, capital improvement plans, salaries and benefits, looked at both advantages and disadvantages of combination, a potential organizational structure, and then also the next steps in the process. So the first one here, as I mentioned earlier, they have, it's 3 surface water rights and groundwater wells. So in California, the State Water Resource Control Board has control over all surface water supplies. In 2014, 15, and then again in 2021 and 2022, they curtailed Carmichael's surface water rights. So they had to get water from other sources, as well as use your groundwater wells. So we have 71 groundwater water wells, and those 3 or 4 mentioned surface water issues too. Those again have stipulations. So trying to meld these together to maximize the our supplies and reliability factors is paramount. So the rates, it's always concerned. I know water, you want water at your tap, but you always are concerned about your water rates. So we found that we have fairly similar water rates, which was good news. The rates for combined district, they're projected to be similar. If the 2 districts decide to move forward with this combination and they apply an application into LAPCO, they have to develop what kind of rate structure they're going to have. So that's one of the processes they're looking into as well. There's also initial cost in combinations, but the study forecasts a lower increase in rates rather than the district staying individual. And I did a real calculation today. I did, my finance person did. He's better at numbers than I am. So I asked them to run me some numbers if the district wanted to raise the rates by $1 million a year, what would it decrease the monthly water bill for 12,000 connections, 47,000 connections, and then 59,000 connections? $1 million a year would raise the 12,000 connections by $6.79 a month. The 47,000 connections would be $1.77 a month, and then 59,000 connections would be $1.41 a month. My point there is the rate base. That's where you save your money for the ratepayers. It may cost money to operate, but that's where you, in the future going down the road, that's how you benefit that large organization. Next slide. So revenues, expenses, pretty much the summaries are gonna remain pretty much unchanged. They have the rate structure right now, so the tax suburban. In the short term, when you talk 2 to 5 years, expenses are likely to increase for one-time expenditures. And I'll give you an example. Software system, the new district had to figure out if Carmichael has a certain software program that's better than Sac Suburban's. Well, it costs money to transfer that into that new system. So this is an example of the initial cost. Over time, as I mentioned before, larger rate base and finding the economies of scale and efficiencies, that is what makes this an excellent effort. Debt service. So as of 2021, Carmichael's debt obligations was $34.2 million, which reaches maturity at 2037. Sac Suburban's debt is $65.3 million, which reaches its maturity in 2034. If you combine those together, it's almost $100 million. But I can share with you that if this were to occur, that the Carmichael ratepayers cannot pay off Sac Suburban's debt, and the Sac Suburban ratepayers cannot pay Carmichael debt. They have to remain separate. There could be a potential opportunity later in the years to refinance and combine those debts down the years. Excellent news here. Both districts have a excellent AA+ credit rating. So when you go out for any kind of refinancing or rate base with all these organizations, they like the larger agencies. They like that revenue coming in for larger agencies. Stability. Capital improvement plans. Through analysis there, both Carmichael and Sac Suburban, we continue to conduct our capital improvement programs. We're doing our due diligence. We're replacing the infrastructure as needed. Sac Suburban, so we're replacing our groundwater wells for water reliability. We out of 71 wells, probably half of those are over 50 years old. So you have to start planning. You can only rehab them so many times. And you start planning for the new wells. Over the last 20 years, Sac Suburban has been replacing 100 miles of pipeline at around probably $125 million. For Carmichael, they're adding groundwater wells for their water supply reliability due to curtailments. They also have the rainy collectors in the American River. What that is, they collect the water from the river, transfers it up to the treatment plant, which at the treatment plant, they have to replace the filtration membranes. So that's ever ongoing, every year, doing capital improvement program. Salaries and benefits, we did that quick analysis there. We both districts offer competitive salaries and fairly similar retirement and medical plans, which was good news. It's kind of hard to project salary changes right now because we don't know if something did happen. That's one of the tasks going down the road to do is find out the efficiencies of positions. And there may be some roles that may change their duties and structure. So that's difficult. Larger full employees, opportunities for less expensive premium plan for insurance. There's always opportunities there. So if this were to occur, that's one of the things, many things the boards have to approve is, for example, the salaries and benefits. They got to pick what plan the new district's gonna provide for their employees. So again, that's down the road after it's a decision's been made. And that's part of that 2 to 5 year process, and you keep on looking for efficiency and so forth. So the potential advantages, Again, large organization, you know, there's opportunities, to have greater scale of efficiencies. Water resource sharing and utilization, as I mentioned, you know, Carmichael and Sac Suburban are adjacent. They have surf and groundwater supplies as well as Sac Suburban. Hopefully a larger district, maybe you get a little bit larger political votes, you never know. Customer service, you know, specialized staff, give a couple examples. Sac Suburban has an environmental compliance department. The staff by 3. I don't believe Kathy has that, so that's another efficiency that we happen. We have a safety and risk management position full time. Not many agencies have that. Going down to the rate and finance bill, I mentioned before about having a larger rate base. That's a excellent opportunity there. One of the items that some directors have mentioned is a large organization. There's more mobility for upward movement for staff and succession planning for future growth throughout the organization. Part of this too is the transparent process that we have with LAPCO. And I know with Sac Suburban, the first couple of years was pretty up and down, but we've shown the success of the organization we built here since that consolidation. So it does work. Disadvantages, now this comment was made at the Carmichael Public Workshop, is there's a perceived loss of local control, you know, losing some directors potentially. We don't know that. We don't know how this map's going to be split up if this were to occur. You know, larger is not better, some people think. That's going to be up to a strong leadership to ensure that doesn't occur. But it's always a challenge. I know from personal experience, on the consolidation, the adapting to change is going to be challenging for staff. That's why we have to continue to keep communicating with our staff on this process. There's always that fear factor when you're talking about combining agencies. And then the challenge is combining existing water resources. That's another cost. If the district chose to change the place of use, that's a long process and a very expensive process. Okay, here's another one. This is another challenge here for the board members. So potential organizational structure. So right now we're using the word combination, and Mr. Henriquez from LAPCO could probably say it better than me, but it's a non-legal term because the two ways to do this is either reorganization or consolidation. So the reorganization is where agency A and agency B, one of these actually dissolve into one of the other. So that's one opportunity. And consolidation, as I mentioned with the Arcade Northridge, that's another one. That's where the name go away and you start from scratch with a brand new name. However, in summary, the end result's the same. One agency still has all the rights, responsibilities, assets, et cetera, of both those agencies combined.
I thought I went to.
Okay. So here, sorry. So this one here, as I mentioned, we've been doing this for a long time, over 2 years. Kathy and I and our team, and with the assistance of the 2x2 committee members, started the technical analysis. And there's a few bullet points here, but I think this is very an excellent topic that we're continuing to work on. But here's some of the items that's in this analysis. There's the history background. There's a communication outreach approach where we're at right now. We look at the district's current structures. Then we look at what would happen as a model district if you combine these together. Governance, again, that's another decision that the board has to make. When they combine, if they combine, there's 10 directors. You don't want an even number, you want an odd number. So is a board member going to resign to bring it to 9? And then they got to make a decision. They want to stay at 9, stay at 7, or go down to 5. For the Arcade Northridge, what they had at that time was one director resign immediately. It's made it 9, and they had the plan, which went to LAPCO as part of the resolution, is each election period it reduced from 9 to 7, and then down finally to 5. It also has in there lessons learned, from the RT Northbridge, as I mentioned, for the first couple of years, it's kind of rocky. One of the things that, didn't occur, was, like I mentioned earlier, outreach to the staff. They determined that this was going to be the admin office for the new district. They didn't determine, we had 2 other locations with staff. They didn't figure out how we're going to meld that together. So I had 2 different staff at 2 different locations wondering, am I still part of this organization or what? So we learned a lot from that we would not do this time around. We'll also plan to proceed benefits accommodation. We'll have that in the report as well. And then the facts about the common discussions with the findings and recommendations. So when that's done, then we'll bring that to the 2x2 committee members for their kind of acceptance approval, and we'll bring that to the full board at a joint board meeting to finalize and accept that that document. Okay, so I mentioned before, we've got 5 steps. So we've done the step 1, we're at step 2. So as soon as this part of the process is done, which we're hoping will be in a couple months, we're going to bring all the results. So all the comments and questions and feedback that we received this evening at last week's Carmichael Public Information Workshop, Kathy and I were out doing our roadshow. We're talking to council members and supervisors and stakeholders. We'll take all that back to the board members so they know how we did in this process. And we're going to ask the board, both boards, to either, did we do a good job? Are we good to keep going? Or do we got to do more for the public? So that's another decision fact that the boards have to make. And we're hoping again, right now we have our next joint board workshop on July 25th. Following that, when you go to the deeper dive, there's a lot of information we got to accumulate, like I mentioned before. Then it goes down towards the end of the year. That date hasn't been set yet. That's another decision point for the board members. I got reminded at each point, there's off ramps for either district. At any point in time, if either district's not comfortable with the way the process is going, they can just say, thank you very much, we're going to stay independent. So there's off ramps built through this whole process. At the end, hopefully the first part of next year is when the board will make a decision to either continue and apply with not an application to LAFCO. At that point, both boards have to develop or actually have to approve and adopt a similar resolution. As I mentioned before, it has, how we're doing the rates, how we're doing, et cetera, is laid out so that the LAFCO commission is comfortable with how we're moving along through the process. I'm not comfortable, they'll tell us what part we have to fix. So with that pretty much ends the presentation. Now we're ready to open it up for your feedback, and thank you very much again for attending this evening.
Okay, we've got a few comment cards, and let me remind everybody again, if you have a question or a comment, you want to pick up one of these forms on that table right back there and fill it out, and then we will come find you. You'll bring it up to Heather and I'll collect those. And then I will move around the room like I'm just about to do and come to you and ask you your question and comment. Please again, give your name and your affiliation if you would. And we're going to start with another Jennifer Harris.
My question is about cityhood, and perhaps the LAFCO representative, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. You could tell us, I know there are some major obstacles to either Carmichael or Arden Arcade. I guess it's Arden Arcade becoming a city, but if somehow all the strange obstacles that exist to ever become a city are overcome and we do become a city, how would that change if these 2 water districts do merge?
Okay, did everyone hear that question? Okay.
Hi, good morning. My name is Enriquez. I'm the executive officer for the Sacramento Local Agency Formation Commission. This is the body that oversees the boundaries of the service areas for all local governments here in Sacramento. Some of you already know that if you've been involved in the corporation. The short question to your answer is that it shouldn't. Should Carmichael or Arden Arcade ever become cities? One of the things that happens is that the city proponents specify to LAFCO what services that city is going to provide. And as you know, from the area here, very few cities are actually water purveyors. They tend to be provided by independent special district. So should either community decide to incorporate and are successful, they would have to specify whether or not they're going to take over water service. Most likely they're not going to, but in case they do, they have to provide essentially a business plan on number one, how are they going to provide that service? How they're going to collect revenue to offset the provision of that service. And in addition, they have to do one other thing, which is how it's going to impact the existing water purveyor for that area and whether it's going to negatively affect. In some cases, it can be detrimental to that district, which in that case, LAFCO, the commission, one of the options that they could pursue is basically not empower that city to provide water service because it would be too detrimental to the existing water. So, so it really depends on what the proponents choose to do. And in some cases, some cities decide not to provide some services, including water, because either they're happy with the existing purveyor or they're finding that they wouldn't be able to make the finances to make the city successful.
Thank you so much. Adele Kruger?
Jennifer.
Oh, yes.
Thanks. My name is Bob Wicker, and I live in Citrus Heights. And my water provider is Sac Suburban. So apparently it's not required that I be served by the Citrus Heights Water District. I can be served by Sac Suburban, and I would expect that a similar thing might happen in other areas if they became cities, like what happened in Citrus Heights. So I just give you an example.
I just wondered about the details, because it sounds simple enough, but I don't imagine that it's simple at all.
Okay, Adele.
Well, I have a question. The question is pretty simple. Does this go to a public vote? Good question.
Yeah, this is go to a public vote. You want to help us with that response?
Yeah, because
It's such a good job.
on that one.
Hi there, Jose Enriquez again. So it really depends on which option the districts take. So for example, there's the consolidation piece, and then there's a reorganization, which General Manager York explained. Are two different paths. So in a consolidation in which both districts dissolve, and you form a brand new district, that is subject to an election. If you go to your reorganization route, which is one district dissolves and the other district annexes, the district that dissolves by law can get the ability to vote on it unless there's a special provision under the law that says that if it's a unanimous vote by the board of directors, that does not go to an election. So it depends on the path that the districts choose to go in terms of how they're going to do this, if they find it's viable, and this is something that they want to do. Keep in mind that your directors are your representatives to make decisions as well. So, you know, by law, they're empowered or entrusted with doing what's best for the district, and that's their fiduciary duty. So, as general manager, actually, I believe you said it, they're not just your director, they're also customers. They wouldn't do something necessarily that's detrimental to the customer. So you have to kind of, there's got to be a level of trust.
But I think it's very important that be made clear in writing. It's not mentioned here at all. And then I just have a second comment. In the short term, 2 to 5 years, expenses are likely to increase to combine. That's pretty obvious that would happen. You're talking about software. They had this big plant, improvement going on. And I will say right now, 2 to 5 years is a long time to a lot of people. And I really, I'm happy with, I live in this Sacramento suburban, good service. You talk to people immediately. I have no complaints. Water tastes good. So I just soon stay the way it is. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Debbie Burnett?
Good evening. I'm a Sac Suburban water customer, and my question is, if you look at the map, are there any discussions about what happens to Del Paso Manor's water district? It sort of sits like in the middle of where we are, and they're a much smaller water district and they have significant infrastructure challenges. So is that going to impact us at all or be part of this either now or in the future?
Well, there certainly are some discussions about that because it's it's a small district and they kind of illustrate some of the problems with having a small district and not having. There's a certain critical size where you're able to provide all the services you need to as a water district. I would say within one of the things that is driving or the consideration of the some sort of combination is that you have to get to be a certain size. Director or General Manager York was saying to have things like a safety officer, to have a human resource department, you have to have a critical number of personnel. And I think Del Paso Manor illustrates that as a small district, they don't have that. They don't have enough rate base, enough customers to make that happen. Now, is it going to impact us, Sac Suburban customers, if there was to be a combination study with Del Paso Manor? And that goes back to, again, what General Manager York was saying in the presentation is that the debts, the cost of improving their facilities, those things are all going to be borne by the constituents, the customers of Del Paso Manor district now. Down the road, once we're all merged and we're all on an even keel, that won't persist forever. But when Arcade and Northridge merged, the improvements that were necessary for the Arcade Water District were not funded by the Northridge Water District customers. And that's the same model. That's something that's required in LAFCO. And it's something that kind of makes it easier to go through this process because you're not accepting the liability or from other districts. I hope that answers it.
Thank you so much. I think we have Lori Boland, who is on our
Jennifer Williams.
Jennifer Williams. Okay, Jennifer Williams is virtual with us this evening. And Jennifer, are you reading her question? So Heather will read your question.
I think she's going to speak.
Okay, she's going to speak. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. Yes, I do have a question because water supply reliability was mentioned as a benefit. But if I remember correctly in reading the documents, it mentioned, I think, and this is part of my question, that Carmichael has surface water rights, so that water can't be used in the Sac Suburban service area. And I should have said, I'm a Sac Suburban customer. I'm sorry, I forgot that affiliation at the beginning. But so my question goes to that water supply reliability benefit. Can someone explain a little more? Because if there are two different water supplies, and there are obviously water rights and permits affiliated with those, and then two different distribution systems, can the water supply from each different district be used in the other district's service area? And then would there have to be capital improvements to join the two distribution systems like pipelines and treatment plants, or how do you envision the water supply reliability benefit?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll get the first part, and Kathy get the part on the water rights. So as I mentioned earlier, Sac Suburban has 4 separate service areas, and Kathy and I's envision here, if this was to continue, is Carmichael would be the 5th service area. So they could use their supplies in there. There is already infrastructure in place. I think we have 2 or 3 interconnections between Carmichael and Sac Suburban. So we can transfer water either way. But I'll let Kathy speak on behalf of her service water rights. I do know that the water that we can receive from other agencies from Sac Suburban may have a potential to be used in Carmichael's treatment plant and distributed.
Okay, so for more on the water rights question. General Manager Reed.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's a good question. Thanks, Jennifer. So there could be excess Carmichael water rights that could be used at Sac Suburban service area. However, they'll still be needing permitting process through the state water resource control board for that to happen. That is a long, arduous process. So we'll just have to wait and see what the water market looks like for that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your question. Kathleen Derringer.
That was my question. I'm also a water user and in note. And my question was really something that hasn't been addressed, that had to do with places use. And I understand that it's been an arduous process to expand that area. So in the meantime, we still have contracts with Jackson and Patrick County. And what happens to us when those supply districts fail in the process?
Yeah, good question.
Getting your steps in.
Thank you. Excellent questions. Yeah, so no, PCW entitlements, right now we have it till 2045. We actually received a long-term warrant contract in 2018. Which at that time, the agreement was 2025, and we got extended to 2045. City of Sacramento as well, we'll still have that. However, when we take those are only in wet years. So in dry years, in dry years, we have to rely on our groundwater supplies.
But if you can't expand that place of use, then what benefit is us to be able to do that? How much? Because we don't have access to it.
Well, that's where what Kathy mentioned is we can go to PCWA and ask to extend the contract plus extend the place of use as well. So that's part of the process. Like I said, it is lengthy and it is very expensive, but that's where you started identifying those efficiencies and opportunities well in advance and start working on those right away.
What do we do to deny our? I'm just being devil's advocate.
Yeah, that would probably be in legal's hands. So I'm sure there's some stipulations we can counter that, but I would want to rely on legal counsel to answer that one. We'll take note of that one.
Yeah, I want to add. Yeah, the state is actually actively promoting the combination of water districts throughout the state. So that would tend to, as far as the climate for doing this kind of thing, we're probably in the best position we've been in the last 20 years. And there's actually a pretty good analysis of the water rights that's included in that initial study that's on the website at Sac Suburban, and it talks about each one of the different water rights, place of use, and how flexible they are. And it's a little dry, but it's a good read, and it sounds like that might have some answers to the questions you're asking.
Thank you so much. Marcia Sanchez.
I'll hold it like you do with men. If you don't mind handing them. I want to talk about the finances. And I'm with Sac Suburban, the customer. Now, you have a director of finance and administration at Sac Suburban, who according to your website makes between $128,000 and $184,000 a year. Fine. But he's not here. And why is that? Because this is all about money and about doing some changes that will cause us money. I think he should have been here. I am rather disappointed in all the consultants and all the corporations we've gotten involved, and I would like to see put online all the contracts that you have signed with corporations and consultants to work on this project. I don't feel like this is a proper use of our funds. And this water district took generations to build. Now that it's up and functioning, you're actually bringing in corporations and all they're there is for profit, for their own profit, not for our profit. So I don't like the way this is going. You've glossed over how much money you paid the consultants. And we have what, $65 million debt? So to be hiring consultants as though this was your inheritance money and not our money is improper. This is our money, not your money, just to use as you see fit whenever and however you want to. Now, I also noticed when they talk about efficiencies of positions, let's get specific. How many people do you want to lay off? How many people are going to get golden parachutes? That's going to cost us. How many benefits are you going to cut from the new insurance programs that you might bring in? I mean, that's how you save money, is you cut things. And as far as this project that you paid for and presented today that says, oh, employees like upward mobility, yeah. But did you really need to pay $150,000 to have someone tell you that? Most of what is in that report is common sense, and you could have done it yourself, or people here in the water district could have done the little more technical stuff. But I see this as a huge waste of money, and you're trying to get us to pay more money on a temporary basis, which temporary, as far as I know, is generally forever. And it's not a little, it's a lot. It hasn't been my 3 minutes, thank you. Yes, I've been watching. So I do think that the extra expenses that you're wanting to draw down on us so that somebody, and I would like to know who initiated this and brought the corporations in. I mean, one of them is a financial advisor place, these Raftelics, they're there to make money. You're bringing in the Wall Street side of stuff to come in here. It's like if you had an orchard that you grew for 50 years, and then when it's all ready to be ripe and picked, you call in corporations to do it. This stinks. So thank you. And I hope you will hand this to the women as you do with the men.
Thank you very much. Right. Marty in the back.
Thank you.
Where's Marty?
Over there.
Did call my last name, so I don't know. You say Laura?
It looks like Marty. I'll come back to you.
Sure. Okay. General Manager York, you mentioned having individual debt. And that each water district would have to pay that off. Could you go into a little more detail about how it happened if the consolidation went through?
Pardon?
How would we pay it off?
I'm so, and ask the question again, sorry.
The debt. Each district, water district has debt.
Right.
And like you said, that could not be combined. So
No.
how would it be handled if there was a market?
Yeah, no, and I mentioned initially with yes, she wanted to know if on the debt, how we go about paying off the debt or combine it in the future. So initially, as I mentioned, the resolution would state that the debt stays separate. So we'd have to set up our billing to do so. I also mentioned the opportunity in the future, if the district wanted to refinance that debt, to at that point combine. And I believe, and maybe Mr. Enrique can answer the question, but I believe probably the resolution would be a statement saying if we wanted to do that, we'd have to go back to LAPCO for their basically approval to make sure we're doing the right thing. I don't know if that's one comment.
That would not be a requirement.
Okay.
We would leave that to the operations of the district to handle those matters.
Okay, thank you for that
It would be a
question.
board decision in the future, yeah.
It would be a board decision if you missed that. All right, Michael Beeman.
Thank you. I'm a Sac Suburban customer.
I used to be an arcade customer. And about the only thing that the arcade water district ever did right was join with Northbridge and start to walk away from all of their screw ups. So I'm generally happy that you guys are taking a look at this potential consolidation. And I really appreciate the fact that you're reaching out and involving the public. That said, I kind of agree with the lady that pointed out the cost of the high cost of the consultants that you've had. And I know from my own experience, particularly with water and sewer projects, that a consultant is someone who's larger wants to tell you what noise it is. And at the end of the study, you're lucky if your watch still works when you get it back, but you have to ask to get it back. That said, I know why you have to have a consultant, because otherwise you get accused that you're doing it all for your own selfish reasons, which I don't think you are. I think you're doing it for the right reasons. With respect to incorporation, that's really nothing for you to fear. In fact, I personally hope that if you follow through with this incorporation and it is with this merger and it is successful, have whatever form it takes, that will be a stimulus for municipal incorporation in our unincorporated area, something that we desperately need. And I personally think that's helpful to have slightly bigger special districts, Metro Fire being a really good example, your own consolidation between the Arcade and Northrop being another. So I think you're moving in the right direction. Please do not fear incorporation. I am connected in part with an organization known as California Unincorporated, which is a statewide organization of unincorporated communities that would like to see the state allow cities to form again. They have as part of their mantra that no harm will come to any special district as a result of an incorporation. Nobody wants you to stop providing water. When you do a good job providing water, please don't stop doing that. Having said all of that, I would like to ask you, please, do continue this outreach with the public and add in outreach to the other jurisdictions in the immediate area. In particular, the recreation and park districts. My own park district, I believe, has learned that SSWD is a really great partner. And I would hope that would continue. But unless you reach out to them and tell them that you've got to make sure you continue to be a good partner, they'll not know. And there are other rec and park districts in your immediate area. There's also Metro Fire, as well as the city of Citrus Heights. So please do make your outreach to those other entities.
Thank you very much. I think we have a virtual.
I just have a comment. I have a comment that was provided. This can go to you. Would you like me to read it? Sure. Candace says, I agree that studies like this cost too much and generally make everything more expensive for the customer / taxpayer in the future, and that temporary increases usually become permanent and grow. Thank you.
Okay, that sounded like a comment, so we'll continue. Thank you for that comment. Ken Payne.
Thank you. My name is Ken Payne, and I've got two accounts with you guys. One at 1341 Meredith Way, and another 4832 Arden Way. Yes, which is really on Copenhagen, and I want to thank you for taking care of the road repair on the private road. There's been some subsidence from some connections, and you guys were good about coming out and taking care of that. I'm retired from the Department of Toxic Substances Control, and I should apologize that I'm probably going on to step number 3. But I had some knowledge of some contaminated plumes going underneath the American River and infiltrating wells of Carmichael Water District. So that may be something, again, and I should apologize, it's probably at least step 3 or 4 of your investigation, but I was wondering what liability that may cause, or whether or not that situation's been remedied.
Okay, so this is a question around Aerostat. I think that's a general manager lead question.
Thanks, Jennifer. So thanks for the question. Since we're with CSA, I'm assuming that you know that the responsible parties have been named, and then they're responsible for cleaning up the site. And Carmichael Water District has a big impact as far as where we can develop our groundwater. But with regard to other than that, there's really not a lot of impact to our funding or our rate as far as cleaning up.
Thank you for that. Lori Porter?
I'm a Carmichael resident as well as a suburban resident. And my question is going to be, is there's so much building going on in Carmichael that although we don't have any water, we could still build more housing and subdivide and continue to do this and add pools. And I have a pool, and so I know how much water it takes. So my question is, my bills have only gone up and up and up. They used to be on the bi-monthly bill, and we changed to a monthly bill. The prices have then again increased. The administration finagled funds from it, and the price of our rates went up again to take care of all those things. The treatment plant was organized and built, and then there were 16 wells in Carmichael, and they shut them all down because of the treatment plant. And then the state said we could only take so much water out of the treatment, out of American River. So then they had to go back to reestablishing wells. And I think now they only have 3 or 4 that are working. And I am just real curious. My bill is, my daughter lives back to Suburban too. And I was comparing bills and inch-wide changes of pipes going into our housing, those are smaller or bigger. How is this going to change? Because if we keep building more houses and we don't put a moratorium with that county on building, the water usage is going to become more and more and more. And we don't have the water, as you're already seeing, in a drought all the time. Especially if we're on low, and if we can't take water from the American River, especially during a drought all the time. Thank goodness we had wonderful rain this winter. So I'm just curious, how do you perceive the price of our services going down? And then my other question would be, is if you were to consolidate, and this new board has only been in the district at Carmichael for a year. And I'm looking at this population here and possibly the few you have online. I think you need to do more outreach to the public as well as Carmichael too, so that people understand what's going on. Because I have found that when you guys have board meetings, the minds have already been set on where you're going. And this is just kudos to the public to allow them to have a presence instead of a voice. So now I would like to have a voice, and I hope you reconsider, and I hope you let Carmichael get back on their toes and figure it out on their own, because every time they run into trouble, they just increase the rate instead of fix the problem that they need to move forward with.
So there were comments, kind of sprinkle quick question.
How do you proceed, just the question?
How are you going to allow the cost of to the public to go down with all your financial burden and the financial burden of Carmichael and the drought tolerant years that you're going to have to go scrummage to get water to put in our faucets? Okay, did everybody get that question?
Yes.
Right. Who would like to respond? Have a comment.
Okay, so moratorium on building might be a LAFCO question. Let's see, we'll start over here with Craig.
So.
So I used to work with Sac County, and if you read the housing element, one of the things that the supervisors and the county is committed to is higher density. So the only way, and they are going to give the building permits. They're actively out there trying to promote higher density housing, accessory dwelling units, and that increased density. So I don't think that's not a water district issue.
It
But-
is if you don't have water for them, and do they know out of a voice from you, if you're supposed to be providing the public concern, and if we don't have water and you let them continue to build, there's gonna be less water for the ones that are already there.
What I would go on to say is that one of the reasons that compels me to think this is a good idea is because it increases the water supply reliability for the region. There are Carmichael is not using all their water rights in the wet years when everything is available. They don't have enough people there. When everything's flowing perfectly, like a year like this, they're not going to use all their surface water. And when everything's real dry, we still have extra capacity within our wells. We have to have extra capacity to meet fire flow and other things. So by balancing our excesses, I think this is one of I think is the most compelling thing is that it balances things out for the region. And by being one district, we're more easily able to transfer that and to share it within a broader community. So that's so I don't know how, yes.
Where do you see the excess? Cause I'm in Carmichael, and they're telling us that we can't use water, we're on, water rations still.
I think that's the message all going across the state in general is that what we're trying to do is build hard savings into the different distribution systems throughout the state. Things like low usage toilets. The reality is that there's more and more people in the state and the water is still remaining constant. So we need to be, as a society, I think, more efficient with how we use water. That's why we have low flow toilets. That's why we don't run our sprinklers when it's raining, when it's not necessary. Because even if you run it down the gutter, it still costs energy to pump it out of the ground or to treat it at the plant. So it's just wasteful. And these are all just things I think that the messaging is still going on this year, and there's plenty of extra water this year.
Real quick on the rates, as I mentioned earlier, so one of the decisions the board has to make again is what are the rates going to be upon a combination? Are they going to keep Carmichael's rates the same as they are right now, and the Sac Suburban's the same? Or are they going to make them the same, which is very difficult? But there's opportunities I mentioned earlier. Sac Suburban's rate base is 3/4 inch water meters, and I believe Carmichael's is 1 inch. There's opportunities for somebody with a 1 inch meter to get reduced down to 3/4 inch meter, which reduces their cost. If they don't need a 1 inch meter in the property, they can reduce it down to 3/4. I also mentioned earlier potential too. It's a lot for a larger rate base. It's a lot easier to have your rates less percentage than a higher percentage going forward.
The gentleman said that, we have excessive water, and the way to rebuild it is to put low flow toilets and to change our water thing. If all the public did that, they would be spending more money, also for the people that don't have the money. And so we have a lot of different economic levels throughout both Sac Suburban and Carmichael. And that might always not be the case that somebody could go out and just do that, because you know how much summer is an hour, right? So then you have to have the toilet.
Thank you. And just a reminder to everybody, the state policy now requires water agencies all over the state of California to become more efficient. It isn't an option. It's required, and that has to become the ask to the customers of the hundreds of water agencies throughout California. So it's a mandate by the state, and so it's something to keep in mind. That's where that's all started. Okay, Karen Klinger.
I'm a neighbor, and I want to thank you. Once Suburban tried to consolidate into the Art Park area, And we of course said no, for many reasons. Also, we've already seen something like this, and it's called San Juan Unified School District. And how did that work out? Not, because it totally took the power away from the parents. And I do not want to see this come to my neighborhood, come anywhere close to my neighborhood, and it will. Sacramento County Water District, I can see this as a huge merge. Why? Because how many of you know about legislation, Senate Bill 9 and 10, which will allow 3 to 4 units for our one home per lot neighborhoods? Governor Newsom, has removed suburbs throughout California. So water, you think you have a lot of water? This was an unusual year. We've not seen one like this in a long time. So does prayer make a difference? Maybe, I hope it would. There's a lot of water going to the Bay, LA, and to the ocean. I want to know where the storage is. How many of you, so that's a question, and I better say that. The state of California, I have a flyer that refers to Assembly Bill 1668 and Senate Bill 606. And you talk about water, you're not going to have any water because the governor is going to, he didn't sign the legislation. Brown did in 2018, and it was supposed to be implemented in 2020. But we had a visitor called COVID first. And also Newsom is going to be running for president, so we can't have any bad news for God's sake. And this would certainly take his case someplace else. But I do have this flyer. I want to make sure that you put it, I'll put it on the chair right there in a moment. Parcel taxes. How many parcel taxes are you going to create against the people? This would be a tax levied against your home, your business, whatever. And the parcel tax, the Sacramento County Water District, whether they have or haven't, I've sent a letter to the Board of Supervisors. They borrowed $95 million, by the way, and it's a special assessment tax, which takes a vote of the people. I never voted for it. So you know what, there might be litigation, and I see a lot of litigation headed your way, and you have to be extremely careful. How many of you, I'd like to see a raise of hands if you're aware of Senate Bill 1668, pardon me, Assembly Bill 1668 and Senate Bill 606. Are you aware of that? I'm going to give you one other thing. Hang on. I do. I get we're so fading to the end. Okay, let's go. And it's a simple one here. How many of you live near a transit corridor? I would say Marconi is going to be a transit corridor, and El Camino, and Watt Avenue. Well, let me tell you what you're going to have, and you're not prepared for this, and no water district is in California. Would you say that there would be 5 stories of low to low subsidized housing, or 8 stories? Well, it's 8 stories. Don had told me before he retired, I finally got him publicly. I know you don't want me to tell this. It's the water. Well, that is kind of a water.
Kind of water you. Let's look at the water question. You're interrupting her.
Yes, you're using my. So I get more time.
Yes.
And you have, lady, you hit the nail on the head. And anybody who knows anything about finance, and you do a refinance, you don't just refinance to get a lower interest rate. You borrow more money. So is that what you're going to have to do? Because is this facility going to accommodate Carmichael's a small water district? Well, I can tell you, you're in trouble, and anybody who would approve this, they're not working for the people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, we're back to you.
Hey, hi. Quick question, I'm interested in fire protection. I like to have that warm fuzzy feeling that the Metro Fire is gonna have the proper water pressure when you need it. Who has better water pressure, Carmichael or Suburban? Just one. I mean, if I asked that Metro, what would they do?
Well, for Sac Suburban, we meet all the fire flow standards for Sac Metro, and I believe Carmichael as well.
All right, Robert,
And the last name? Manuel. Right.
If you can read my writing.
Let's see, can you explain the GSA groundwater accounting system? And how much percentage would you use each year annually? That,
I'm not,
Using
all of your allotment.
allotments, and if you're only using like 10% of allotments, you're not using all of your groundwater allotments, so you have plenty of groundwater water. You have plenty of groundwater available.
that's correct. I'm not gonna do that. Yeah, well, the GSA accounting framework is pretty difficult to explain, but yeah, so Sac Suburban in our north and south service areas in total, actually prior to the 2015 drought, we were producing probably about 45,000 acre feet. Since then, we're down to about 32,000 acre feet. But you mentioned the groundwater portion of it. So real quick, might as well explain this up here. Obviously, this map up here. This map up here to the left of the division map here for the directors. This is the American River Basin. So this goes from 1956. As you can see, this is the decline of the basin. So this is down to the late 80s. This was dropped, and it was basically because Sac Suburban, Rolinda, Carmichael, everybody was just kept pumping and pumping. And so the conjunctive use, what conjunctive use is when you have your groundwater supplies, you use it in the dry years. In the wet years, you turn that off and you purchase surface water. So Sac Suburban, Carmichael does it, Sacramento County does it. That was when it began in the region here, and you can see this all began to climb. And when the drought started, it barely dropped, came down, came back up, and we're into the second drought here. So as far as the groundwater recovery basin, you know, using that's why we're down to 32,000 acre feet too, is that assist in this recovery.
You explain that in what the term is in lieu water in conjunctive use. However, in the groundwater sustainability, the accounting system is the overlying riparian groundwater. And you are given an allotment, there's a spreadsheet, and the Sacramento Groundwater Authority accounting goes back to 2015 on how much you didn't use each year. And it was totaled up, and you have millions of dollars in the ground. And I have never gotten a legal opinion on, are you able to sell that, or is it like surface water riparian where you can't sell it year from year?
Well, we actually, that's
You
good.
understand my question?
Yeah, good point. And so it's called banking. Water's gold. And so we bank. I'm talking about in banking. So we banked 320,000 acre feet. We banked. Do we sell it all? No. But we've actually, since 2009, 10, 13, I think 20 and 21 and 22, we did water transfers using that system. And in all those transfers, I think we, in a bank, cash money, probably about $4 million that we don't have to collect from our ratepayers.
Correct.
Here you go.
But that isn't answering the question. The question is riparian overlying groundwater.
Right.
That is the accounting system for appropriated surface water. There is a separate accounting for the overlying riparian groundwater. And El Paso Manor is only using about 80% of their allotment. So even El Paso Manor has the allocation to use more water. And they're not.
Correct.
And you have a lot of storage that you haven't used in pumping. But I've never got a legal opinion on if you could sell the overlying riparian groundwater in following year.
Yeah. I'm not answering that one.
I'd love to answer that. We're writing that down and we will make that part of the analysis. We'll look into it. You have a lot of water smart stuff there. Right. Does anyone have another question or comment?
I mentioned. that-
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Marty Kihara, I should have said SSWD. It seems to me in a very simplistic way, in the short amount of time I've studied this, that there's more of a financial benefit to Carmichael Water District, and that the benefit to SSWD would be to gain some surface water rights. Is that a correct synopsis?
Well, so, I think there's a benefit for both agencies. I think the biggest one, and I've told this a few stories here in the past couple of months. I've been doing this for 43 years. And I remember, the first mile of pipeline that Arcade put in late 90s, was $500,000. Today's cost is $3.2 million. A new well just 5 years ago in 2018 was $2 million. Had to go back to the board the other evening to ask for a budget amendment. Our new wells are costing between $8 and $10 million now. So it's not going to go backwards. We need to continue replacing and improving our infrastructure. Just like any other water district, doing their due diligence. I do know in the United States that all districts are trillions of dollars behind on infrastructure replacement. I think, I'll speak on behalf of Sac Suburban, Kathy, on Carmichael, but we've done an excellent job. You mentioned debt. We got $65 million in debt right now, but it started out about 125 million. And that was to buy pipeline going from Folsom into our district. Also to go into the river for the city of Sacramento, for the conjunctive use programs. So it's not going to stop, and the costs keep continuing to rise. So to do our due diligence, we need to look at these opportunities and take advantage of them. It's not just tomorrow, the next day. I'm talking 20 years from now. We're not going anywhere. Everybody needs water.
Maybe just a little one. And talking about the $120 million, those are for improvements. Sac Suburban, one of the things that we do that I think really protects the ratepayers is, on the whole, we pay as we go. Our debt is debt from previous generations that decided that we're going to borrow to put in infrastructure. It's like credit card debt. Why do you pay interest when you do the projects you can afford to do? So that's what we've been doing, I think, and that really protects the customers, all the ratepayers, protects me as well as all of you. And as far as, we gaining water rights and accepting a financial liability, I don't see it that way. I see we've constantly talked about the plumes from Aerojet. There are plenty of plumes that come out of the Fallen. I think that's where we have plenty of Chrome 6 hits around McClellan that knock out wells that we've made the investment in that we can't use. So we're talking, for me, and I mentioned this earlier, this is a water supply reliability issue. This is spreading out the resources that we have in the region amongst the people in the region. And that's what I keep coming back to. And I think no matter how much it costs, if you can't buy the water, that's what the farmers in the Central Valley are feeling now. And I don't ever want that situation to happen for myself or for my neighbors. I moved into Arden Oaks in 1972, and I've pretty much been there since. So this is where my community is where I grew up, and this is this is my community service, and what I want to do is guarantee a safe supply for my neighborhood and my community.
Thank you.
So Carmichael's water district, as Dan pointed out earlier, was built in 1916. Incorporated in 1916. So that is it's beyond 100 years ago. So a lot of our infrastructure was also putting in the early fifties when all the housing developments were put in, and even in the eighties. That's the new houses or new developments in Carmichael. So ever since then, there's a lot of infrastructure that we need to replace in order for it to continue to function. Having said that, the times have changed and Carmichael has changed between the groundwater uses and also surface water uses. The reason the district did that is because we want to preserve our surface water rights that we received from 1916, but we also want to give, so to speak, to give the groundwater basin a break. As Dan pointed out in that picture, groundwater level dropped to a very low point, and here in the late 80s, Carmichael water treatment plant became online and functional in early 2000s, right up here. So we just want to make sure that there's plenty of water supplies for future generations, and we also want to build in some drought resilience, the sustainability for the future people. Carmichael Water District built out now, so right now we only have a certain rate base. And in order to be a more regional partner with all the other districts, that's why we started the consolidation or the combination of several Sacramento.
Right. I have another question.
But the treatment plant was built, but recently the state has cut the percentage of water that's been able to flow into it for water usage from the American River. And some of the water district does not have all the wells that they used to have. And that they just made one operational and instead of burning the system of the state, really it was 2021. And so there was a new well on San Juan Unified District there at school. And you actually could feel it as it's running because they changed the pumping that goes all the way up to ground. So all the other wells, I think we only have 4, and the majority of them are shooting on San Juan Unified District. So how does that continue to work in our favor? Because there's only 4 wells. And it's a drought. So thanks for the questions. As Dan pointed out, Carmichael Water District was curtailed in 2014, 2015, and again in 2021, a full curtailment and partially curtailed in 2022. So during these curtailment times, we are using our groundwater wells and we're also purchasing water whenever they're available. And that's the reason why we're building a new well on Garfield and Ingle Way. Right now it's behind some sound barriers, so we're not bothering the residents, but we are investing in new wells. And we are also getting grants to put into our infrastructure. The well that's at Garfield and Ingle is fully funded by 2 grants from the federal government as well as the state government. And we're also in the process to obtaining more funding as we can to put in more wells. In the future, with this climate change that we're experiencing, with longer and more frequent drought, that we can make sure that all our customers have plenty of water. And by the way, for the surface water treatment plant, because we're buying water from somewhere else during the drought time, we do ask our customers to reduce the water usage. And that is just also just happens to have, but we are operating our treatment plant at a lower flow rate, and then we amended with all the groundwater in order to provide enough water for the system to have.
Any other questions? Question?
Okay. I have a question that's rarely asked, and it has to do with a weighted vote. If you were to, if there was going to be a bid, property business improvement district nearby, are you currently in some type of a situation where you have ever voted for a P bid or anything of that nature, park district, school district? And if you were, how many votes would Suburban Water District, once you continue to consolidate other water districts, how many votes would you get versus me or anybody else in Suburban Carmichael or whatever amount of water districts that you get consolidated? Dan?
Who wants to take that one?
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Thank you, Greg.
I have no idea. But we will record that and we will get back to you. And we're gonna have more of these meetings and people are gonna have more questions and we'll try to respond to that to the best of our ability. But I certainly can't answer that question.
Well, please make sure everybody learns what a voted, weighted vote is, because the people are screwed.
Well, thank you for that heads up. We'll look into that. So I think if we have no more comments or questions, perhaps, do we have one more? Yes. Oh. See that, you want that in your pocket. All right, what's your question, sir?
My name is William Eubanks, and I have been a ratepayer in Sac Suburban since its inception. Prior to that, I was an arcade ratepayer back to '69, when I paid $2 every other month for water. And now I pay a lot more. I started coming to these board meetings and all these discussions about this from the very beginning. I think I've been coming to board meetings here for, I don't know, 20 years, something like that. Because I pay some of the highest rates for my water. I have a large lot. I happen to think that Sac Suburban has evolved into an outstanding organization. And they are able to address so many different issues relating to delivering water within their purview. And address it in a very competent, serious, and expeditious way. And notwithstanding all this stuff about P votes and all that, which I don't know anything about either, I am fully supportive of the attempt to combine with Carmichael. I see it as an opportunity, not necessarily a done deal, but an opportunity to get surface water, which Sac Suburban does not now have. The state of California is coming down with more and more restrictions on the use of groundwater. And that's where all of Sac Suburban gets their water. There's new contaminants that are coming out. Some of those contaminants, like the PFAS. Yeah, because Sac Suburban is dependent on separate wells, you cannot afford to put treatment for those contaminants on every well. You just can't do it. As far as rates and all of that, I have no expectation whatsoever that my rates are going to go down or that they're going to stay the same. They haven't since I've been paying into the, Sac Suburban and its successors, and it isn't going to end. I mean, every time my wife goes to the grocery store, she comes back and tells me how much everything costs. That's not a problem with the water, and it's not a problem with Sac Suburban. That's just a problem with our society. The problem I have with all of this is the fact that there seems to be a concerted effort on the part of some of the governing organizations, like the wonderful
Who was that that you?
LAFCO.
LAFCO. Seriously. Pardon? It's a very serious name.
It is.
Not very serious, what? Name. No, I mean, I've been told and I've read that it takes LAFCO a whole year on average to go through something like that. That is a momentum killer. So I mean, if you had both boards here today and they voted to proceed, you'd have to sit back for a whole year before you'd find out what restrictions and rules that LAFCO is going to impose on you. I just think that's ridiculous, in my opinion. I think the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So I'm all in favor of this. I hate the fact that it's going to take forever to make it happen.
Thank you for the comment.
I mean,
You are correct, sir. It's gonna take some time. If it's any turn, it's for two reasons. Number one, it's the legislature has entrusted LAFCO or mandated on LAFCO to be very methodical about any boundary changes or consolidation. So it has to be very careful with any boundary change that an extension of service can be provided in a cost beneficial manner, meaning that costs are offset by revenue. And in addition, in a way that it's not detrimental to existing customers. So in something as complex as this, it's very important that Carmichael customers they're not going to be impacted negatively by such a reorganization. And the Sac Suburban customers are also not impacted negatively. So that does take time. That analysis does take time.
a year or more.
But it can take a year, but it's really dependent upon how well prepared the entities come into LAFCO with their application. And what you're seeing with the boards and the staffs of both districts, and they should both be commended, regardless of whether your opinion on whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. They are being very methodical about this kind of thing. And they're doing all this work outside of the LAFCO process so that they come in to LAFCO with a proposal that's fully baked. And when it's fully baked, it means number one, less time at LAFCO, which lowers their costs for application. And in addition, it expedites the matter. So it can take a year, but it's fully dependent upon how well prepared the applicants come into LAFCO.
So they know
They
in
know all this.
advance what you're gonna require.
Correct. And that's what they're
Question
doing.
is still, why does it take a year?
Well, no, I'm not guaranteeing you it's gonna take a year. I'm just saying if they come in with everything. If they come in with everything the LAFCO requires, it's gonna be less, it's gonna be substantially less.
You'll make it bad?
I'll bet you a cup of coffee.
You gotta
Just the
justify.
personal funds, by the way, not the agency funds. But I would be, because the reality is that the reason why they're doing all this, I mean, it's not perfunctory. This is basically to inform the public about where they're going. Phase one is both districts see, each other across a crowded room. They completely tune out everybody else that's in the dance hall and they're talking and they're interested. Phase two is more along the lines of they're going out on dates. You're determining that, hey, you both like cats, you both like hiking. Later on, some of the questions that are being asked here and also at the Carmichael Water Forum, but they're talking about what staff is gonna get cut, what are the hard dollar numbers in terms of consolidation. All those questions are in phase three and phase four, where you really are seriously looking at, how many children you're gonna have, how you're gonna discipline them, what schools you're gonna send them to. Those are the questions. It's a methodical process and again, the boards and the staff should be commended that they are trying to do this, but in a very public manner and touching bases with you about where they are in the process to keep you informed all along the way. But we can, the moment that they take an application to LAFCO, you can time me. I'll give you my card. If it's more than a year, happy to buy you any cup of coffee at your favorite brand. Well, whichever. Again, my personal funds, not agency, but I'd love to do that because the reality is that I think if this proceeds as planned, I think they're gonna come, if the boards, because it's not a done deal, I want to reemphasize that, no votes have been taken. But if they decide to proceed and they come in with their application, they're well on their way of coming with LAFCO with a fully baked application, which then significantly shortens the amount of time that they go through the LAFCO process. And so if that's the case, it'll be less than.
We do have 2 comments from our virtual audience.
So Lori Boland says, after reviewing the report and hearing the arguments for and against, we want to express our appreciation for the thoughtful consideration of this idea. We support consolidation, but realize that it needs to be done carefully and transparently. Thank you for your diligence and for listening to the strong opinions of the customers and trying to answer the valid questions. The next one is Jennifer Williams says, I heard quite a few comments and questions about water supply reliability tonight. While the current report has information about each district's water rights and supply, it is not easily understood by everyone. If this combination effort continues to move forward, we might, blocking this, sorry, might be helpful for future reports and studies to include more specific information in layman's terms that can be easily understood about exactly how water supply reliability will be improved for customers of both districts.
Thank you both for your comments online.
I have a question and I forget Mr. Lasco's first name, but, Enrico?
Jose,
Jose,
first name is Jose.
I like Jose. Is there a representative for the unincorporated area of the county and also a representative for cities? Unincorporated area, please.
Yeah, okay, so are you saying to LAFCO or like there's somebody who represents the community as a whole?
LAFCO.
Okay, so the LAFCO composition are 2 supervisors, 2 members of the city council from the 7 cities, 2 directors for independent special districts in the county, and 1 member who represents the public at large and is not an appointed or elected official of any government body within the county. So currently on LAFCO, the 2 supervisors are Sue Frost and Rich Desmond. And they're both very much engaged in this process. So you have representatives who are who represent your community on the board of supervisors or nearby that are currently sitting on LAFCO. The city representatives are the city of Sacramento and the city of Iowa. So it's the little city along the Delta. So they're very much in touch with water issues and impacts to landowners and registered voters. And so for the independent special districts, we have a director from the Sac Metro and a director from Herald Fire Protection District, which is an unincorporated area on the southeast side of the county.
Okay, how about us that live in Arden Arcade or Carmichael? Who represents us?
Rich Desmond.
Okay, and I thought so as the supervisor. Okay, and then is it possible to get PowerPoint of the presentation by you this evening, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
We put it on our website. We'll post it. Yeah.
Quick question for Jose. One of the independent district representatives, is that up for an election?
Yes, Which one of the independent, resigned? So the commissioner, Lindsay Liebig is from Harold Fire Protection District. And her seat is up for re-election. And all of the special districts have been notified that they can at the moment nominate someone from their board to sit on LAFCO. Once the nomination period closes, then it will go to an election in which all the independent special districts vote amongst those directors. Correct.
That was quite an education.
You want to comment real quick on Mr. Henricke's comment on transparency? So we've done an excellent job. The board has directed us and Kathy's board as well to be as transparent as possible in this process. So we have our 2x2 committee meetings. We actually post those, the packets 3 days in advance. And we love to have anybody here come to those meetings. Mr. Eubanks comes here sometimes by himself, and so he gives us a hard time. But no, we really encourage, if you want to come and see more detail, we do have the finance administrators at the 2x2 meetings. We do have staff there because we get more detailed in the reports. We actually show more detailed reports that we're working on. So you'll see more at those 2x2 committees meetings.
Would you explain what 2x2 means?
Oh, yeah, 2x2 committee is, when we first got this implemented, both boards made a decision to implement this. So they choose 2 board members on each board to participate on the committee. As I mentioned, Director Locke and Director Jones were on 2x2 committee, and then Emerson and Nelson the other one. So we bring information to the 2x2 committee members to keep us on track. And once they feel we provide them the appropriate information, then we can take that to the boards. But we filter through the 2x2 committees first for their kind of direction.
Okay. One more. Hi, Marcy Sanchez again. I would just like to ask the board to put online the financial statements, detailed financial statements for the last 5 years. And I presume they're audited, but regardless of whether they're audited or not, I'd like to have those financial statements online. And as I already said, the contracts that you're doing with the consultants, with the amount of money you're paying consultants, I also think you should stop hiring consultants. You've got a great staff who can do this work, but we're just being taken to the cleaners with all your consultant fees. So please put the financial information online.
Comments, questions online? Do we have any others?
Nope.
No. Did we wear you out?
You could never wear me out.
I can tell. All right. Would it be fruitful to go back to your 5-step just to remind people where you're headed? Just kind of closing off.
Let me find it.
We can find it.
Yep.
Really good to remind everyone.
We'll get it back on her. Well, let's give a brief explanation where we're at. It won't be so as elegant as Mr. Enrique's, how he used those examples. Mine are pretty basic. So I mentioned the 5 steps. So we're here at step number 2. This is where we bring all this information to the ratepayer stakeholders. As I mentioned to you, Kathy and I have a roadshow. We're talking to stakeholders and outside. Somebody mentioned earlier about outreach. How many, I can't remember, maybe Christine knows, how many postage cards we send out, how many outreach, I mean, it's extensive that we put out. So again, on the transparent side, really went out there and went above and beyond that process. Thank you, thank you. Yeah. That one too, yeah, yeah. So we're there, and so the plan is when we finish this, again, all this input that we've received, both at Carmichael and Sac Suburban, and then when Kathy and I and some of the directors go out on the roadshow, we're bringing that back to the both boards to see if they're pleased with where we're at as far as outreach. And they'll give us direction then to either, I think it's sufficient, and we'll go to step 3, or they'll say, no, we need more outreach. So we'll get that direction. And like I said, right now, that joint board meeting is July 25th, and it's 6 p.m. We don't know where yet because we were talking earlier to the boards. We had a good turnout here. We had a good turnout at Carmichael. I think we need a little bigger facility to share that information. And then for that, and it goes to step 4. We're hoping to do that part end of the year. And then the other part would be early next year for the application. One of the items that's very important too, besides an application to LAFCO, is we also have to have a water system permit amendment by the Division of Drinking Water, and that takes about a year as well. But that doesn't hold up the process. It's another process we have to do to get our systems combined. So again, we're hoping by early next year, we have a vote to apply with LAFCO or not. Again, those dates haven't been set yet, but we're working on those, and as soon as we get those set, we post those as well. So with that, you want to, I don't know if anybody wants to make any comments going around, any directors?
Director comment?
Just thank you, everybody, for showing up. Yeah, I hope to see everybody at the combined board meeting, because that's where these kinds of decisions get made. We're taking your input today, but in order to make a decision like this, we need both boards together. And that meeting is when?
The next one is July 25th.
July 25th. We don't know where yet, hopefully not Golden 1.
Yeah.
However, I really would like to see everybody here at that meeting.
Will something be sent out to the public or to our right there?
Yes.
Yes.
It'll be on the website as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. What's your website, please?
SSWD.org.
Okay.
And I just say also, we have our 2x2 on the 11th. And the other thing is I think that almost all the information anybody's asked for is already on the website. We have extensive financials. We have, we go through extensive audits. Sac Suburban is audited more than any other water district. I think we've always had the highest possible clearance as far as the audit results. All that information, every contract, everything else is all part of the public record. And it's all on the website. So if you have any questions, though, feel free to call the general manager.
Yeah.
Give you a cell.
I do appreciate your time and your interest and your involvement in this process. It's a deliberation for all of us and for both water districts. There's a lot of information to consider. We need to make sure that it's the right thing to do for our ratepayers. So again, your input is invaluable, and your questions, it all helps us in that process. So if there's no other business, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting for the night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. We said our company was trying to place that. I haven't gone to barbecue in the last decade. My brother's always there. Yeah, no, I used to be out there. What?